Thanks a lot. I know usually the lunch session, it's a bit of a tricky one, so big thanks for registering and coming. It's a bit of a different session what we prepared today. So it is a technology conference, and you'll see in this session we want to give you a bit of a different perspective, and I'll show you a little bit later what we mean by that. And I'm very, very proud, and you'll see later on, to have some, let's say, a non-technologist with me on stage, and you'll see later what does this mean, because what we try to do and what we will run through the session is to maybe we'll work out a lot of different roles within a company. If you look at an IT project, a lot of different statements that you maybe have heard from certain users or management, and what we try to do today is to give a different perspective on that. And maybe there's something in it for you, and we really hope there is. So this is a bit what we try to do. So my name is Braumann. I'm joined by
Claudia Kaefer.
Yeah, Miss Doctor then, you'll see later then why. So just a bit of context, I tell you what's my background, and maybe that helps you a little bit relate to why I'm such a believer that this is an important session for this group. I looked a little bit at the attendee report. We have a diverse audience, so it's a bit hard when we can show up hands quickly. You know, who is a Cisco customer? Yeah, it's a guess, but a bit more than half. Who is a Cisco partner? Yeah, okay. And we have some Cisco folks too. I think that's good too. So what we try here to get the context. So my background is I'm with Cisco now for 19 years. It's pretty much a long time. And I grew up at Cisco with collaboration technology. So when we hit into call manager from all the way IP telephony, I started with AVID, and went through all these journeys we did when we did acquisitions, got something in, and kind of always learned a lot how projects in the context of collaboration work out. I started as a systems engineer in different areas. I did different regions. I focused a lot as a partner systems engineer on collaboration. So this kind of is a bit my background. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I got the chance to move into a global role. And by that, kind of all I learned by being a systems architect, I got to look after something we call partner transformation. So what was on my agenda, on this team's agenda, was how does, let's say, the ecosystem, if you look at a collaboration project, evolve? So what's kind of a skill set, a partner needs to do successful projects? How do we tap into these new things that this stuff should be adopted? It should be loved, what Amy always said. It should be exciting. How do we tap into that? And how is the skill set of a partner? So this is a lot my background. And by that, I learned a lot throughout the region, what is the skill set those partners have. And this is a bit the story too. Right now, the title says workplace transformation. That's also a theme you hear a lot. So my new role is a bit more focused on this new term, but it's a lot similar. It's a lot of how does this change that now comes with, if you look at the next generation workplace, how does the new meeting room, how does the new office look like? There's a lot of things Cisco can do with services and technology, but technology and services alone won't do a successful project. And this is a bit the storyline to where we're going. And so by this one, I'm very proud. And to say that Claudia is here on stage with me, let's just give it a bit of a background, because over the years, by finding those new partners, FRINK is, for me, a bit of a role model for one of those partners. So some background about FRINK. So FRINK Advanced Services is a partner. It's I'd say there's 3 segments that are important. So one segment, they're from Vienna. They're a small Austrian partner, a boutique partner. I like the term. But one segment is technical excellence. I would say the typical Cisco collab thing, what we know. So they have a couple of collab CCIEs that are really well known throughout the industry, well known, and they're kind of helping and doing technical excellence, system integration, big complex IP telephony, collab, Webex projects, transition to cloud projects. That's one segment. A second segment, and this is also very interesting, is even the management of the other side is focusing on user adoption. And this will be our main theme for today. And user adoption is kind of very interesting because it's not that much of a technology, so it's a sociology background. And Claudia will dive into a little bit later. And the third pillar of FRINK, and it's also very important in this where we are going, is software development. So they develop software based on top of Cisco collaboration APIs and architecture. They have some nice products to show here too. And also they have the capabilities to do integrations, business workflow integrations, and adapt and customize services that we as Cisco deliver and customize them into customer needs or work with a partner, to get this out the door. So that's a bit the background. So just to maybe get a bit of a context where we're coming from. And most of it, you'll see, is we try to do a bit of a translation. So why are we here today? I covered a little bit. And the session will be structured in two main pillars. The first one will be translations. I found it very interesting when we looked at the attendee report, and we have a lot of different people with different backgrounds. How could we maybe find something is in for everyone? So this is what we try to do in the first section with translations, where we go into how would, at a typical color project, what most of you maybe stumbled into in whatever way, how do those statements and roles end up, and what does, let's say, a sociologist understands behind that? And what can you take out and maybe look at it from a different way, and maybe you can take away from something from this. And the second piece where we poach in then is kind of take the methodology, FRINK, and I think you dab into that, is working on since 5-6 years in color project to bring this nuance in. How does this approach look like? And also we give you a lot of customer examples. How was it solved for this vertical, for another vertical or something? So back to FRINK, what we said is kind of, those new actual partners. So what we happened was last year, so FRINK got the CX Partner of the Year award based on what they did over the last couple of years. So also a bit of a proof point that Cisco is evolving a lot here in this direction. We also need to evolve ourselves, so the way we do our self-services, documentation, anything, and our CX organization evolves, but also our partner ecosystem will and does evolve in this direction. And you'll see a lot of interesting things today. And one more thing, and then I hand over, is the whole story around this session is done that we'll get this as a book. I was talking yesterday a little bit. It's about weeks or months, but it's there soon, I think. Claudia will tell us later. And the idea here is to have what you'll get as a crash course today, a bit of a concept of learnings of 5 phases you'll maybe hit and see within the user adoption project around Collab. Kind of how do those learn? Because I think at the end of the day, your story to it was that there wasn't that much out there what you could get as a starter, to dab into. So this is just what usually, if it's not there, you just write it yourself. Or was it the story?
Yeah, I think so.
So Claudia, then, tell us the story about the book. And
Okay. Thanks all for coming. I'm super nervous, so probably you notice 2 things. I shake all of your hands. The latecomers, unfortunately, I didn't mention. 2 reasons for that. Number 1, I'm very nervous, and that makes it into a workshop and not into presentation anymore. So kind of we work together because I shook all your hands, right? So I tricked myself a little bit on that one. And number 2, I had a little survey when I started out. Should I wear my doctor's coat, yes or no? Somebody said, no, you look dangerous because of the coronavirus. So I listened to you, and I'm right now in a more civil note. Like Alex said, so what we're trying to do is, Florian started with us 2 weeks ago, and he was like, how can I get into user adoption? Which book should I read? And I was like, there isn't any, right? There are a few academic papers on something, but nothing really. And then I did it for the last 5 years, and I was like, well, let's put the knowledge or the experience, not really knowledge, but experiences I have into a book. And that's basically the base of today's presentation. So quickly, how do we define user adoption, right? There are a lot of definitions out there. Cisco has the CX definition. We call it user adoption because usually what we do is we take a company that has technology A, then they introduce or migrate to technology B, and in between there's a change going on, right? So people need to adopt. Hi there. People need to adopt to the new technology. So what we see a lot is a lot of frustration, end user frustrations, IT management frustrations, dissatisfaction. We see a lot of technical problems, and a little bit of chaos, more or less, right? Overloaded project leaders, you name it. I'm pretty sure you had all of those experiences yourselves. So what we try to do is We try to figure out a way, how can we get people on board, right? I think what I need to say right away, we don't have a guaranteed way, and I think there is no guarantee. If you find a supplier or a service provider who gives you 100% user adoption, go and hire them. We don't give this to our customer. The only thing we say is we can increase probability of user adoption. That's what we can try to do. So we try to make the technology agreeable to everyone. Another note, if there's anything unclear, or if you have comments or questions in between, just stop me and let me know, okay? So I can find a better way of explaining what I'm trying to say. So those are usually the things when we get involved, right? So users don't feel supported because they download a client on my computer and then nothing works anymore, or nobody has ever time for me. There's no information available. We involve on a global rollout, Webex Teams rollout, and there's no information on how to set up a chat, right? So all of the things, create a lot of frustrations. Or the perceived non-ability of IT to consider business needs, right? Those are the points where we usually get involved, where people say, okay, let's try and figure out the new way, and how can we change the delta, and how can we change the way we look at these entire projects. So what I'm trying to tell you is that regardless of the industry the customer is in, regardless of the gender or age group we work in, and regardless of the technology they work, we keep seeing the same people over and over again. So we've done projects in various countries, various company sizes and whatever. So we see those 5 people over and over again, and that's what also the book is about. So this is kind of the circle we're trying to close. So we see the end user, right? We get into that a lot. We're usually involved with the C-level. They hire us, or we report to them. Then there's usually an IT manager who says, you know, I had done so many rollouts in the past, in the last years, and something always was off, and I would like to change it, but I don't know how. So those are also people who hire us usually. Then there's the vendor. You can see in the picture, the guy likes his bookings. So when people sign the hardware deals, that's the vendor. And then we see a lot also the assistants. So what I'm trying to do right now in this session is give you a feeling of the people we work with and what they have to say, and how we then translate it into projects. Okay, so I'm trying to be really hands-on on how we do it as well. Is that all right for everyone? Yeah. You don't have much choice anyway, because the presentation is prepared already.
One question.
Good, the end user. I think all of you, the end user is usually the obstacle in projects. We heard statements saying like, you know, IT would be such a nice job if there weren't end users, or the end user is too stupid to use it, or, you know, those end users call me and they want me, like in kindergarten, they want me to carry them through the project. So let's look at those guys.
So now they announced another tool. Again, if I remember the last time that this was the case, I really don't feel too good about it. The IT department, they just changed something on my computer, and they didn't even tell me about it. And of course, it didn't work after that. I'm telling you, new things hardly ever meant something positive in this company.
Does that sound familiar for some end users' experiences? So what I did is I took this statement and distracted this one here. So this is what we hear a lot, right? Another tool, why should I use it? What is it for? So, and that also reflects somehow, sometimes we see a lot of jungle with customers, right? We see Jabba, we see Webex meetings, we see Teams, we see in addition sometimes Microsoft Teams, and it's just a confusion on what's going on, what should I use, and for which use case. So this is a statement we see a lot, and it creates a lot of frustration usually with the IT teams. That's what we see. So let's look at it. So the tool, of course, is important, right? I refers to which stakeholder do I believe in. Am I the end user? Am I an assistant? Also, the C-level is an end user. Need. Why do I need it? And for which use case do I need it? Right? So this refers to, like, I want to use it if you tell me how and for what, I would be willing to do it. And then, of course, the use case. So what do these colors mean? Those colors refer to projects. That means this refers to the technology, right? Here, which stakeholder group are you in? Which use case should I use it for? And what's the context of using it? So this is how we translate statements from various target groups. So I'm going to run right through that, and then you're going to see a pattern. I'll walk you through it. The IT C-level, which sits by accident in the back of this room, who's also very good looking, of course. Who is that guy? That guy is usually a lot into politics. What we hear a lot from the C-level is, yes, go ahead, start a project, but don't open another construction site. I don't want any political fight. Involve the trade unions, involve the marketing, involve everybody, right? Those guys are usually not interested if it's Cisco or Microsoft Teams. They want solutions. Right? Tell me a collaboration tool that works. I don't want any of my C-level friends to complain at me that it didn't work because I'm responsible. That's what we usually hear.
So my assistant told me about this new technology. It sounded really exciting, but I immediately started thinking about the usual obstacles that would go along with adopting this new technology. People, they need to know why they get the new technology. They mostly don't care about specific features, they just want to work and continue on working as before.
Sub-message here, people don't know why they get the new technology, right? So people in companies, if you have a company with 40,000 users, you probably have a very lot of different target groups inside the company. No. No refers to awareness. They don't know in the sense like, are they aware that there's a new technology? Why? What's the strategic impact? Why we need the new technology in the first place, right? Get refers to deployment. How do you deploy the technology? Because there are various ways where you can do it. And again, the technology. So, like I said, those are the things we need to consider. And the C-level is very aware of that because he knows that this is important for his C-level friends, and he knows that the deployment and the technology get him into trouble. And nobody likes trouble. You don't like trouble in your job, the C-level doesn't like it either. So, as you can see, we're coming along, and there's a color pattern developing. So I think you get a hunch already of what I'm trying to achieve here. Gap mining manager. Those are usually the guys, like I said, they had rollouts before. It didn't work that well. A lot of service tickets, a lot of complaints from the top management again, and they want to do something different, but they don't know how. How can we change it? They perceive something that must be different, but they don't know how. And it's usually when we come into play. Let's look at one.
So yeah, I was so excited about this new solution. But to be honest, I don't think I'm that hyped about it anymore, especially after rolling it out in our company. And I think the problem are habits. People are simply not willing to go outside of their normal routine just for a new solution, because they're not that tech savvy or not excited about new technology as much as I am.
Okay, that creates, you know what I'm trying to get. So those guys, I get really excited. Webex team, super fantastic. They roll it out, and it doesn't work out so nicely as they thought it would be. So those guys are usually really not depressed, but frustrated, and they want to move on, but they don't know how. So again, here, people, they don't know how. Use, again, the usage and the technology. So again, it refers to the same topics, right? I think you get the point I'm trying to make here. So we have, again, the same patterns. We have the same problems, just from various angles. And I think that's the point of what we're trying to do with user adoption. Again, color coding developing. The digital assistant, those are the ladies that take over a new office and a new job and throw out all the folders and all the papers. We've seen them a lot. So those are the ladies that can also be the obstacle to each project. If they don't like it and you're on the C-level, those ladies are going to kill it. And So we spend a lot of time cuddling those ladies, making sure they're happy, making sure they support the project, and because they have a multiplicator effect, right? Each team has one, each C-level, each management has one. So those can make or break a project.
Getting rid of paper my job has not only reduced the amount of cuts I got on my fingers, it has also helped me spend less time in dusty archives and spend more time on getting my job done. My boss is not always as delighted about technical change as I am, so one of my duties as his naturally digital assistant is to convince him of the advantages of new technology by simply using it. Can you help me with that?
So what we hear a lot from those ladies is, my boss must like it. So the boss refers to the stakeholder group again, right? Management. A lot of customers also call them VIP. VIP support is very popular inside companies, larger ones. He must like it. Nobody of you would adopt a technology or even buy shoes if you don't like them, right? Why should people do the same? And she needs support. So from the assistant side, that's usually the only stakeholder group that proactively asks and demands support from IT. And they should get it in the best possible way. I'll show you later how we try to do it. Again, color coding. And the last one is the vendor. What a luck we have one here.
But yeah, we call the picture now. You know, we didn't have this in the rehearsal, but I said, you said we like the booking.
You like the bookings, Cisco likes.
No, but it's a very interesting. What's the statement from us usually? So what's kind of the Champions League in collaboration right now is, I think some of you have it, to get a flex plan. So to sell a flex plan together with a partner that a customer commits to it. I mean, who are the stakeholders we are usually involved with? Yeah, but it's C-level, it's the IT manager, so this is how those projects evolve. But on the other side, the new thing is it's subscription-based services, and so what's the usage? How do we as the vendor, we maybe see more and more kind of what's usage patterns, we maybe see about satisfaction, see how many TAC cases were opened, you know, in this case, but we don't really have the reach. And what sometimes happens, and usually we see that is, sometimes you get this feeling something is wrong with this whole thing that's happening there. So either, you know, the customer bought the right thing, the right shiny endpoints, all is cool, the partner did a cool job somehow, but it just doesn't feel that it's really, you know, it's really there properly. I always say the Champions League would be the cultural change within the company, but we don't see it. So as a vendor, sometimes feels a little bit off with what the customer, what's happening there. So who would be the translator? Who can help there? That's what we see and where we see value. How would you translate it? Sorry.
I would translate it that also awareness comes to Cisco, right? If introducing a new company is such a big deal that even the vendor, after having its bookings and saying goodbye, notice something is wrong there, something probably is very wrong, right? And that also belongs to the stakeholder group that Cisco has. So Cisco is on the phone, and that's why they sometimes don't notice it all the time. Okay, so it's awareness and the stakeholder group again. So those are the statements, and I think what you can feel is we have recurring patterns, and that's what I'm trying to get to. So what we usually see when we enter a project is those are the problems or the pain points that we see, obstacles, or actually the missing points we see in projects. There's a lack of awareness for the technology. There's a lack of context. There's a lack of stakeholder definition and the use of the technology and the deployment as well. Was the right technology for the right stakeholder group, for the right structure, deployed in the correct way? So this is a very simplified version of our methodology for the ease of this presentation. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to run you through a lot of customer examples. And just a little disclaimer, like I said, it's our methods. There are various methods out there. We cooked our little soup the last 5 years, like we say in German. And you're happy to join the picnic, but feel free to find another methodology or another supplier that works well for you. That's what I'm trying to say, right? So this is kind of what we came up with.
best practices in this flow. So yeah, let's walk through the flow. So if I look at it as a vendor edit, so what do I mean by stakeholders? I mean, I mentioned it before that I say, a stakeholder is the one who signs the bill. For me as a vendor, kind of signs the contract. But how would you define stakeholders and what's the importance of stakeholders? Can you give some example here out of projects?
Yeah, I think, so this is a project, so all of them have customer projects and I removed the customer logo and the customer name. So what you see here, this is one of examples from 2018, actually it was last year, but it doesn't matter. So what you see here, the first 4 rows, for example, are not even 20 people, but those are the people making decisions, right? Can you see here with VIPs? Can everybody see that? Okay, so those are the people taking decisions, buying the technology, right? When you look down, those are a few thousand, right? Those are the end users or actually the users. What you don't want is you don't want any problems with those 4,000 people, and you don't want any problem with the 20 important people. So that's why we spend a lot of time of defining who is relevant for this project, who has a multiplicator effect, who has a political effect, because even if you're not a governmental, there's still a lot of politics running in companies. So we spend a lot of time in defining them, because even though the receptionist and the mobile user might not be politically important, but the mass of those people might create a political steer, and that's what you don't want to happen. And that's why we spend a lot of time in kind of how can we reach them, how can we define them, how do we take them on board. That's one of the reasons. Does that make sense? Yeah? I see a few notes. This is a second, it's very pixelic. Okay, this is a second example from another customer, how they defined stakeholders. So what we do usually, coming back, we define this, we define priorities, and we say, okay, can we cluster some of those groups, right? Not each one, not each line of them is important, but let's define them and see if we need them and how we can cluster them and combine them in such a way it's more efficient, more cost efficient for the customer as well. The next customer, for example, defined the 2 target groups in this one. There's one group always scheduling Webex meetings, and there's one collaborating. So the customer in this case decided it doesn't make a lot of sense to explain whiteboarding and screen sharing and remote access to the ladies who schedule the meetings. That's typically not their use case. That's not what they need. So let's not waste somebody's time of a C-level assistant with explaining features and tools to her that she doesn't really need. So it's also about understanding what this person group, the stakeholder group is doing and what will increase their work efficiency. Nobody of you is going to use any tool that doesn't help them in their daily business. And I think the same holds true for any internal customer stakeholder group.
So Claudia, one question. So you said before you also defined some roles. So it's a definition process. So where you have the experience to work with customers, to work with partners, to get kind of this information out of them. So who is usually the other peer? So is it a one role where you say, is it the IT manager who helps you cluster, the users and the stakeholders? Or is it someone else? Or is it more a joint thing?
Yeah, it depends on the customer. Sometimes IT departments have a pretty good idea what the structure of the customer is. We had one case, for example, of a stock-listed German company, where the IT department didn't even know how sales works. And we were fascinated, right? So they make a lot of money, they're stock-listed, but then they don't know how sales works and how the salespeople do their daily job, right? So we conducted, for this company, for example, we did in-depth interviews and figured out a way how we can support them, ideally. So it's either the IT department that hires us. Usually they also send me to the C-level to present this, to get approval for that. So it makes a lot of sense.
That's kind of the C-level stamp is on it.
C-level stamp. Sometimes they integrate people from marketing, from communications. It's completely up to the customers. There's no standard procedure for that. This is another customer example. Why is it so, the quality is so bad?
Because here is so close to the screen.
Okay, so here is the same. For example, what they did was, it was a global Webex Teams rollout. Those were, I think, 15,000 users. And they had a little POC, a pilot in 2018, and what they said is, well, if people used it already in the pilot for half a year, there's no point in explaining them on how to open a chat window, right? Because they've been using it for half a year already. So let's define our internal users by their knowledge level, right? Then they had the integration with Salesforce. Then they had completely new users. They had users they have never been on Webex or Jabber, so they were completely from an old world. They had people who knew Jabber, so they had certain features already used. And that's how one customer defined it. So it's non-project or no target group stakeholder analysis looks like another one. They all look very different.
Context, next one. So if you look at it from your perspective, what's examples for context? So which one would you say, give us some, because you said, I like the stakeholder one very much, where you said stakeholders can be a role, but stakeholders can also be a group of people, like the pilot users. But what's kind of your view on context, or give us some examples?
What does
here.
context mean?
Yeah.
So the very, very worst case we've ever seen was IT installed clients on laptops, people opened it, it uploaded, nothing worked, and nobody told them what's going to happen. And it was a global rollout, and they switched off the old phones. So nobody was able to call their mom or their wives. So they were completely lost. That was the worst case we've ever seen. And of course, it created a huge turmoil in the company. So context simply means telling people, why is this technology relevant to the company? What's the strategic impact for the company of introducing Webex Teams, because it has one. And this is context. So it's important to tell people, why are we introducing the new technology? What's in it for the company? Why is it important to stay ahead of the market? Why is the C-level, has it made those decisions? All of those aspects relate to context. So you put it into a larger context on why. Just a simple reason why. So this is an example of what we did for customers in 2017. So there was an intranet page giving all this background information, right? Why are we doing it? Why is it important? What does the technology solve that we couldn't solve before? What is very popular with customers at the moment is the workplace transformation, workplace of the future, or home office enablement, or end-of-life stuff. So there are various strategic visions you can give to users that are important. Because only if I get the feeling it benefits the company, then my willingness to use it myself is very much increased.
But you can say it's a translation service, that you say you take kind of the new technology and translate it into the language of the company, actually, into their own CI, into their own, maybe that's the...
Yeah, but also the purpose. I think my feeling is that all of us are very purpose-driven, right? Nobody of us does anything without getting a personal benefit out of it. And even if you donate money to charity, your benefit is a really good feeling. So all of you need to see a benefit for either you or your employer in order to kind of get moving. And I think this is the point I'm trying to make. So yeah, we then translate it into the company style. For example, in this case here, this was a German automotive supplier, a very large one. They really liked transforming the collaboration setup they had. So they went for the transformer visual as well. Right? So it kind of suits the company, it suits the industry they're in, and it suits the strategic vision they have and try to enable. This one here on the left was a governmental project. They changed from Unify, right? I think from Unify to a Cisco UC world, and had a complete departure, and they chose the departure topic as their leading strategic or vision for the future. On the right-hand side, you see a chemical manufacturing company. So we took the chemical stuff. So what I'm trying to say, or what you can see the pattern here, is that context relates to a lot of things. Context relates to which industry is the client in, what's the core business of the client, what are they trying to reach, which goal are they trying to reach with the new technology.
So one said also here you had it in the middle, so that's also kind of a storyline you get to. So we can see here Emma. So you kind of you even give it a persona to kind of identify the support and the whole flow and the context into that. Or can you maybe explain the Emma example?
Yeah, in this case, the customer wanted to give it a name. They just thought they didn't like Cisco as a name and they didn't like Jabber, so let's give it a name, which again created a lot of problems because there is Cisco Jabber, right, when you open it, and there's no way for removing that or substituting it. So, but the customer insisted on it. We had our concerns, but we still went ahead with it. So this is not always the case, but Element AI, let me see again here, transforming. Yeah, sometimes the transformers got names as well in the communication. Here. Now we have more examples coming up later that show it better. But like I'm trying to say, it's completely up to the customer, right? It's our job to come up with examples, with suggestions how we could do it, and it's up their decision to kind of go on.
Okay, I know. That should mean awareness.
This should mean awareness.
So that's a feature of PowerPoint. Let's see. So awareness. Ones don't quote me sometimes, but being around for a while, we always had a bit the joke. Sometimes it could happen that we jointly, I know, blame kind of Cisco and partners, and so we joke sometimes. We talk about a solution without asking for a problem. Oh, that's a very common thing sometimes in IT, isn't that? And Cisco, I think we have a good track record in doing this anyway, in kind of, here's PowerPoint and we PowerPoint you to death, or sometimes how we do customer briefing. So awareness, that's kind of a little bit going in this direction. Can you help me solve that?
Somehow, somehow. So there are two things of awareness. The number one is people need to be aware that there's a new technology. Like I said earlier, right, just implementing a client on a computer and then going with it. It would be nice if somebody informed me that there was a new technology at hand that I'm able to use, right? So first aspect is there is new technology. Number one, what can it do for me? Like I said earlier, personal benefits. How can I profit from this new technology? And this is, for example, how we did. This was for an airline. And again, here, like I said earlier, the context point, right? So collaboration in the cloud, the Webex Teams introduction, and it fitted again their industry they're in. What we did here was...
This is what you mean. It was for an airline, I think, or collaboration in the cloud. So.
Yeah. So we try to make it match. But the awareness in this case is there is technology and you can use it for the following use cases, right? So this is just one example. Awareness also relates to gamification, which we use a lot. So if you look here, for example, we have this spot the difference quizzes a lot. End users go crazy for that, right? All of a sudden there's something you can do. I elaborate on that later on a little bit more. But I think what we're trying to do also with awareness is that people stare at this interface for 10 minutes to find the differences, and they interacted with the interface and learned about it without actually sitting down and learning, right? So how can I make aware of the technology in a pleasant, ideally in an entertaining and human way, right? Does it need to be a 90 pages PDF without any pictures?
Anything about our user guides?
Like the Cisco user guides. They're fine, right? If you have the patience to read through them, I love them too. But there are other ways you can present technical information. I think that's the point I'm trying to get across. This, for example, was Jabberman. Jabberman was quite...
It's now Marvel Universe, and I think they are in the next Avengers or so.
Yeah, of course. There's a new movie coming up. Awareness also relates to the fact, how can I describe a use case to an end user, to a very large audience? I can go ahead and write 3 PDF pages that some people might read or not read, or I go ahead and paint 6 pictures here and explain the use case in a comic or visual way. Right? I get the message is exactly the same. It's just more pleasant, and people recognize it. The same, for example, the right-hand side was Chopper Cat. It was quite popular as well, because we had a service afterwards, what worked well and what didn't. It's just something different. There was the feedback we got, it looked like nothing they've ever seen before. And of course, it pushed the IT department tremendously. All of a sudden, everyone knew them. And here, the guy who's sitting here, who is Pickled Loud, so we work also with testimonials a lot. I mean, that's nothing new, right? We don't reinvent the wheel. We just set it up differently. So we take company celebrities that are known internally. Awareness 3. This is, for example, this is a really old project, 2016. This customer wanted to push the telepresence because they invested a lot of money into all those endpoints, those shiny, beautiful endpoints from Cisco, but usage wasn't as high. So they said, well, let's do something, right? And they said, we don't mind, go crazy. So again, here we had each week, over 6 weeks, we had a little challenge where, how do it work? So we had it posted on the intranet, and then people could send in the right answers, right? I mean, here, that's just a little thing, but here, for example, we wrote, it's your bring your cat today work, right? Everyone should bring their cats to work, but you have a really important telepresence meeting in 10 minutes, and you need to get all the cats out, how many are in the room, right? So it's just really simple, but a little bit fun, and we try to kind of make it a little bit more different. Another example for awareness, this became really popular with also some customers in here. Postcards, right? When do you ever get postcards again? And even in the office, you hardly get anything that is related to company news. The only thing probably that you get in a letter is when you're fired or if something really bad happens. So we thought, well, why don't we print out something that is nice, that is pleasant, that makes sense, right? And what we did is, before the launch, we sent out those. I think we had 6 or 7 different motives for each target group. Like I said in the beginning, for each stakeholder, we had different motives. This here was, for example, the security guys, because the customer identified the security department as an obstacle. They said, you know, Webex Teams, and then they creamed their pants, so we need to do something with them. So we sent this out before the launch. Here on the right-hand side, the customer said, the etiquette in our Webex meetings is really bad. People misbehave. Like we hear a lot of dogs barking, we hear a lot of typing, or people being on a phone, not muting their microphone. We want to improve the quality of our Webex meetings. And this is also way how we did it there.
Is this something you do in-house, or also kind of doing those comics yourself? Okay.
Yeah. So what we do is we can spend a lot of time with the customer. We get their problems, then we come up with ideas, then we suggest that, and then they say yes or no. It's really. We even do the printing, deliver it to them, so they don't. They say, you know, then we need a different offer for printing and a printing company, and it's not listed supplier. Can you take care of everything? And then, yeah, we do that. Yeah, this is, for example, talking about awareness. Like I said earlier, right? So we have different, this was in 2017 a project, different target groups, different stakeholder groups inside the company. So you can see they receive mailings or postcards or any kind of whatever channel the customer searches. And then each target group gets slightly different information, right? Fitting on their personal benefit. Like I said earlier, with the example of the assistant who doesn't do whiteboarding. So we want to inform her about whiteboarding, but the assistant, for example, gets a hardcore Outlook plug-in, book a meeting, crash course. So this is how it looks. So basically, it looks like a really editorial plan of a magazine or a newspaper, and then we just execute that over time. This is an example that took us 15 minutes. But was extremely popular with customers, or with end users. What we did was, at the end of each information mailing that went out to end users, we added here the faces of the UC department. And it sounds so simple, but everyone was like, oh, IT has a face, and those guys are nice, right? And they are some handsome as well. So it was all about taking IT out of the basement and kind of giving them a face and making them more human, right? And apparently it did the job. Right? So there are little tiny means and screws you can use to improve those projects, just to give you an idea when you do it next time, what we usually do. Yeah?
Cool. This one we can read again. Deployment. So, but deployment is driven by my IT resource, by the architecture, by the technology. So what do you mean by deployment in the context of your cycle then? Where does this...
Deployment doesn't mean I do the deployment. It's like very far from that. Deployment means discussing with the customer which deployment makes a lot of sense. Right? We've seen customers that have 300 sites globally, and they said, we do each site by site. But at the same time, they had a global metrics organization. And I said, if I want to call you or you, how do I know if you have the new technology already, right? So there are things, it must fit the company structure, it must fit the technology, and it also must fit the company or the relevancy of the technology. Right? Because there's no point in calling you on Jabber and you don't have it enrolled yet. So that's what we're trying to discuss with the customer. So it's not our job to do the deployment. Our job is to align the user adoption efforts with the technology.
Also the awareness stuff you can kind of tie into the deployment cycle.
Yeah, because one of the classic things is you roll out the new technology and 1 month later somebody sends an email saying, hey, you have this right now. Right? And then everyone is wondering why nobody's using it. Or the other way around, information goes out, but then have been technical problems, and then 1 month later you can only use it. Right? So ideally, in an ideal world, it's aligned, and that's what we stress with customers. So we don't take any engineering jobs over, we just try to kind of get it in one way, out of one hand.
Support. So you're doing the tech cases first then? Or?
Yeah, right. We love tech cases. No, we don't do any tech cases. So what we're trying to do is, what we've seen a lot in very large companies is they outsource the user help desk or the service desk. You call them with a problem, and 3 days later, if you're really lucky, somebody calls you back. And we said, well, this is really not, right? If you introduce Webex Teams and it's an instant technology, and you have a problem, you need instant support. And that's what we did. So this was one example in 2017. This is, if you see Jabberman, you've seen him before. So we deployed him to each of the 12,000 end users, and he was there for asking questions. Right? So what we tried to do is, during the migration phase, set up temporary support systems that bypass the user help desk most of the time, but are there to kind of help immediately. This was with Jabber, hang on, and this was the same with Webex Teams here. So what we usually tell customers is try to set it up, and they say, oh my God, we have 12,000 users and we cannot support them on a lifetime. But what we usually do is we set it up on a temporarily base. So we say, okay, from day launch for 2 weeks, we also communicate the fact that this room is only open for 2 weeks. And we post news, updates, and anything else that makes sense and help users in there. The advantage for the technology team or for the engineering team at the customer and at the partner with this one here is that you are aware of problems within seconds. So if you have a bug or a huge problem with the deployment, you will know immediately and not 1 week later because somebody was talking on the hallway. So this is why we do it. We also use the VC units a lot for communicating the stuff and the information. And then also that's a pure incident that we have a product that is very user-friendly self-study, a self-study platform for Cisco learning scripts. So this is what we use a lot with gamifications and quizzes too.
It also ties in kind of the methodology, the gamification and things like that is worked into this tool. Then.
Yeah. So I think what we see a lot, and that's what I meant with one of the first slides, is that what we see a lot is people roll out technology and there's no information available anywhere, which is also kind of frustrating if you're looking for something. User help desk doesn't call you back. You're trying to figure it out yourself. There's no information. So we try to make sure whenever there's a problem on the user side, they have a point, a platform they can hold on to.
Technology then. I like the way you show that. So we know from Cisco there's a lot of awesome technology. So how do you put this in context now? And why does it kind of align with the user? This
is just basically, if you have to explain the concept of a Webex, thank you, Webex-enabled telepresence, it's easier for the user to understand if they get a grasp of the concept. So, they don't need any in-depth configuration details, they just need a concept idea. The same here. That was in 2017, that's why the Spark logo is still on there.
And I think at the end of the day, I started in the beginning a little bit when I told my story about why I'm so passionate about this piece, and I hope you get a bit of an understanding. But right now you say technology and then use is the Champions League, or if I laugh, I like it. So, you have 5 years of experience now. Can you prove it a little bit that this makes sense what you're doing? Or?
Well, that would be good, right? That would be nice. So, yeah, what we do is we do a lot of tracking of and reporting for what we do because I think it's important. I do a bad job if people say it didn't work. So this is usually the slide the C-level gets because it gives you all the information in one go. No more information needed. And then what we did, so I came up with a little bit that needs some explanation, with a benchmark. So what we see is, we see Webex Teams rollouts without any user adoption. We see it without and delayed and with. So what we see is when customers start without any user adoption, after the first month, the increase of users is 6%.
So if you just throw it out.
You throw it out, it's by 6. This is average numbers, right? Give or take. Your reach into the organization is something like below 8. That's why I marked it in red. What we've seen are customers that said, we're going to start without you. It's going to fine. We're going to do it our own. And then along the way, experienced some trouble and then hired us. Those are the guys that start out low in the first month. And in the first month of our awareness and the rest start out quite high. So this number only is 1 month jump. Right? And where we see the highest reach into the organization, and then of course the return on investment, right, is if you start right from the beginning. So this is what we see a lot. Because I think Cisco has, of course, the goal to renew sales and subscription, but also the IT management or our customers are eager to get a budget secured for the next year as well. Right? It makes everyone's life easier if they can prove it. And for me, are there any comments on that one?
It's 69 or 96? 696.
Yeah. It's close to 700. So what we did is we said, okay, we started out with 2 users, right? So the IT department had a few users in the beginning, and then after 1 month, how many people were actually active?
Active users.
Active users. Yeah, and the jump was incredible. What?
This is the number of users.
No, that's percentage. The percentage jump.
696.
Start with 2 and
You start out with 2. The multiplier, yeah. So those are the numbers. So I think the core message is it makes your life a little bit easier. It brings your investment back. I can also share that later on if you want to. That's usually what we do. Is there anything? Does that answer your question?
It does. I'm asking for the proof point. I say I can read it, that I say, okay, it is very important. You can start with it later too, but you shouldn't. So the more and more you focus on that, is something what we see. And I just can say, also my experience, having seen a lot of, everybody of you maybe has an example of someone bought something really cool and not using it even in a personal way. So it's kind of what makes the difference sometimes. And what we see so often, I mean, yes, we are technology driven, particularly I think most of us in the room here, but we always try to see, like, hey, the technology is cool, I love the iPhone, of course I use it. And kind of how to bring this context sometimes that to understand these human factors, how are these decisions made, how are users feeling, how to make them feel secure or trust in the technology and not doing this. I don't like that. It's so funny sometimes. How often do we see, and you have the example too, where you say you have users who themselves at home, doing their smart home, that it's crazy, and start to code and do that and integrate in something. And in the company they say, oh, no, I don't touch anything new on this tool. So that's company stuff. So what's driving that? What's the difference here? And this is, I think it's a very interesting question. I'm pretty sure most of you have the answers. And what we tried kind of to walk you through, kind of some example of the methodology, some proof points here. As said, I mean, I've been involved in a lot of projects and no FRINK has good proof points, over the last 5 years in projects. So yeah, that's what we wanted to share with you.
So I think, thank you. If you have any questions, comments, skeptical looks from this area here, from the second row, if you want to discuss that more in depth. We have a booth down in the World Solution 31C. Yeah, which also includes a handshake of the very good-looking CTO. But I'm here, and let me know if you have any comments or want to share your story. I'm really eager. Thank you very much.